Which choice best describes the overall structure of the text? What does that even mean? In this video, I'm going to answer that question, and I'm going to teach you a 3-step system that will help you ace structure and purpose questions on the SAT. And these steps are going to look a little bit different depending on if you're dealing with function of the underlined portion versus structure of the overall text. Let's start with those underlined questions. A stands for analyze. So since the A is to analyze the passage, we are actually going to read the whole passage, and we're going to slow down a bit for the underlined portion. Researchers have found a nearly 164,000-year-old molar from a member of the archaic human species known as Denisovans in a cave in Laos, suggesting that Denisovans lived in a wider range of environments than indicated by earlier evidence. Before the discovery, Denisovans were thought to have lived only at high altitudes and relatively cold climates in what are now Russia and China, but the discovery of the tooth in Laos suggests that they may have lived in low altitudes and relatively warm climates in Southeast Asia as well. C stands for clarify, and I want to clarify what I think the function of the underlined portion is in my own words. And the way that I think about function is literally just what is it doing? So in context, we know that there's this discovery of a tooth, and it changes what researchers believe about these Denisovans, right? The underlined portion is telling us before the discovery. So it's telling us what researchers used to believe. So for my clarification, I might write something like, it tells me an outdated belief. And from here, I would be good to move on to step 3, which is E. And E stands for eliminate. And the E, of course, is to eliminate answers that don't match my clarification. So I'm going to take a look. It dismisses as untrue the research presented. Okay, so that's not what I said. It defines a term used in the description that follows in the rest of the sentence. No. It emphasizes the main goal of the research. No. It provides context that clarifies the significance of the information that follows in the rest of the sentence. Okay, so here's what you need to look out for. Your clarification, what you decide to say is the function, might not perfectly match up with the answer because there might be a couple of ways of looking at it, or there just might be more than one function. But I do see the connection here. By telling me about the outdated belief, it does give me context to clarify how significant the tooth was, because I know before the tooth, they believed something different. So my answer is D. Let's try a medium one, and I want you to go ahead and use that ACE method and try this on your own first, but let's go ahead and get into it. So A, analyze. I'm going to read the whole passage. Following is a text from Herman Melville's 1854 novel, The Lightning Rod Man. The stranger stood in the exact middle of the cottage where he had first planted himself. His singularity impelled a closer scrutiny. And I might stop there and sort of think about scrutiny for a second, because we know that if you're under scrutiny, you're being judged. But in this case, it seems to mean something a little bit different. I would say it means, to pay close attention, something like that. And then it goes on to say, a lean, gloomy figure, hair dark and lank, mattedly streaked over his brow. And I would actually stop there because I feel like I already know what the underlined portion is doing for me. It's giving me the reason why we decided to pay close attention. So I'm just going to take this note and say the reason. So the reason to pay close attention, and I guess we could say that reason was his singularity. And in this case, it seems like singularity sort of means like his specialness, his uniqueness, right? Okay, so I've done my analyze, I've done my clarify. I'm going to move on to eliminate. A says, it elaborates on the previous sentence's description. No, we get a description after. It introduces the setting that is described in the sentences that follow. No, it describes the man. It establishes a contrast. No, it sets up the character description presented in the sentences that follow. Yes, the reason to pay close attention, the reason that we get this description from the narrator's point of view, our answer is D. All right, we've got a hard one here. Same deal. I want you to pause the video, try it on your own first. but let's analyze. In Jane Austen's novel Mansfield Park, an almost imperceptible smile from potential suitor Henry Crawford causes the protagonist, Fanny Price, to blush. Her embarrassment grows when she suspects that he is aware of it. This moment, in which Fanny not only infers Henry's mental state through his gestures, but also infers that he is drawing inferences about her mental state, illustrates what literary scholar George Butte calls deep intersubjectivity, a technique for representing interactions between da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, I'm stopping there because I feel like I already know what's going on with the underlined portion. It's giving us an example of this inter-whatever, right? So I'm going to say, gives an example of the inter-whatever. And let's eliminate. It states a claim about Austen's skill. It does not. It advances an interpretation of an Austen protagonist. No. It describes a reoccurring theme in Austen's novels that is the focus of a literary scholar's analysis, summarized in the following sentence. Is the inter-whatever a theme? I don't know if I would use theme. It says a technique, so I'm looking more along the lines of technique. I'll hold on to C for now, just in case. D, it provides a synopsis of an interaction. So that's just a fancy way of saying a scene, which could work with example. In an Austen novel that illustrates, okay, since it illustrates, it means it is an example. Something that illustrates something is an example of something. A literary concept. Concept, technique. That is the connection I was looking for. D. And I've actually got a bonus tip for you, which is to boop that like button for me. All right, let's talk about what ACE looks like when we have these overall structure questions. So we still use ACE. The first step is still to analyze, but as we analyze, instead of focusing on an underlined portion, we are trying to focus on what are the different sections of this piece of text. And then when we clarify, we're going to clarify what those sections are. So many films from the early 1900s have been lost. These losses include several films by the first wave of Black women filmmakers. We know about these lost movies only for small pieces of evidence. For example, an advertisement for this. There's a reference in a magazine for this. Da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, so I'm kind of stopping there because I feel like I know what's going on. I would say to clarify, we get lost films, and then we get evidence of lost films. Those seem to be the two sections. I don't feel like there's more than two. And same thing, the last step is eliminate, and that one doesn't really change at all. We're just comparing it to our sections rather than comparing it to what we think the function is, right? The text identifies a complex problem, then presents examples of unsuccessful attempts to solve the problem. No. The text summarizes a debate. No. The text describes a general situation and then illustrates that situation with specific examples. All right, this is what I hate about the overall structure questions. They're so vague in the answer choices sometimes. Now, this is what I said, right? We have lost films and we have evidence of lost films. Notice how this is actually going to line up with C. A general situation, super vague, but lost films is a general situation, and then illustrates that situation with specific examples, evidence, examples, illustrates. So that lines up, and that's probably going to be my answer. Just keep this in mind that your version of the parts of the text is probably going to be more specific than the actual answer. So look for those really vague connections. Let's just double check. D, the text discusses several notable individuals. No, it does not do that first. And order matters too. Like, even though it does talk about a couple people, it's going to be in order. So we need to say what happens first, what happens next, what happens last, or in this case, what happens first, and then what happens after that. So C is our answer. All right, let's try a medium one. Pause the video, try it on your own first. Many archaeologists assume that large-scale engineering projects in ancient societies required an elite class to plan and direct the necessary labor. All right, first section already. And you can definitely, start to clarify as you go, since we're looking for different sections. The first sentence is usually a pretty good candidate for the first section. And I'm getting belief of most, I'll say psi for scientists. However, recent discoveries such as this have complicated this picture. Using radiocarbon dating, a team concluded that the Long Canal was most likely... Okay, so I don't care about the details here because what I'm seeing is two sections. There's a belief, and then we get recent discovery challenges that belief, basically. Those are the two sections that I'm noticing. All right, let's see if that works. It describes a common view among archaeologists, then discusses a recent finding that challenges that view. That's literally, it's like almost exactly what I wrote. I would just choose A and move on. If you were not feeling as confident as I am, definitely, the safe move is to eliminate, but that is like almost a 1-for-1. That's my answer. All right, and here's a hard one. Try it on your own first, but let's go. Mathematician Claude Shannon is widely regarded as a foundational figure in information theory. All right, for that first sentence, I would say my first section is something like man is famous. Then we get his most important paper was this when he was employed at Bell Labs, utilized a concept called this information and a signal to determine the fastest rate. So this next bit here is basically saying like why he's famous. So why he is famous. Then Robert, one of his colleagues, said that this discovery and from it a whole communications. So that could kind of tie into why he's famous, but it seems like maybe a third section, maybe like reflection on why famous. So those would be, I guess, my 3 sections. And if it's a hard question, you might have 3 sections, or I might be wrong. There might only be 2. Let's find out. It presents a theoretical concept. Nope. We're looking for man is famous, right? It introduces a respected researcher. Yeah. Describes an aspect of his work, why he's famous, and suggests why the work is historically significant. Reflection on why famous. That seems pretty good. C, it names the company. No. D, it mentions a paper. No. So actually, I could get rid of A, C, and D really quickly because B is the only one that starts with man is famous. So ta-da, pretty cool stuff. Now that you know how to ace text structure and purpose, you're going to need some practice. Go ahead and check out this video right here for over an hour of guided study practice on the types of questions that show up on every single exam.